Hello, everyone and Professor. Today we'll be talking about for our presentation about Apple's strategic position after reaching a $4 trillion market value. And my name is Isaiah Mendoza. So let's go ahead and get started in this. For the introduction, Apple continues to stand as, one of the most influential technology companies in the world, of course. And the recent milestone of reaching $4 trillion market valuation highlights its strength, innovation, and global presence as a company, as a whole. This presentation will examine Apple through two strategic lenses that are essential to understanding its sustained success, global expansion, and strategic leadership. By analyzing Apple's global growth, their efforts and the leadership decisions that support its long-term strategy, we can better understand the factors that contribute to its competitive advantage and, how the company is positioning itself for future growth. As for the next slide, it'll be kind of their the current event summary, which we chose of Apple reaches $4 trillion. Here's the picture right here, and then this picture right here will show us the kind of that skyrocket shooting up of the market, showing us their them reaching the $4 trillion market valuation. But according to NBC News report, Apple recently became the third company in history to reach a $4 trillion market valuation. The other two are Nvidia, and I want to say the other one is Microsoft. Which is marking a huge milestone for not just Apple in the industry, but for technology in the industry. This growth was driven by a combination of strong global sales, particularly in iPhones, expanding service offerings like iCloud, Apple Music, increasing investor confidence. Well, not increasing, but this is increasing investor confidence in the company's long-term strategy. Analysts attribute this achievement not just to product demand, but also to Apple's stability, disciplined leadership, and strategic shifts in global operations. The event highlights how Apple's strategic decisions continue to influence market expectations and reinforce its position as a global leader in the technology world, the technological world. And yeah, let's go ahead and get on to the next slide. Why global expansion and strategic leadership matter for Apple. These two strategic topics, global expansion and strategic leadership, are central to understanding Apple's long-term success. As a company operating in more than 100 countries, as we saw in that first picture in the introduction slide, Apple relies heavily on global markets for both production and revenue, making international strategy essential for growth and stability. Efforts to expand manufacturing to or in India and diversify beyond China help reduce geopolitical risk while also opening new consumer markets. At the same time, Apple's strategic leadership, particularly in under Tim Cook, has been driving force behind the company's operational excellence, global scaling, um, and strong investor confidence. Cook's leadership style emphasizes disciplined decision making, supply chain resilience, and sustainable global growth. Together, these two strategic areas play a crucial role in helping Apple achieve major milestones such as its $4 trillion valuation. And that's it for me. And on to the next presenter. Thank you for watching.
Hi everyone, my name is Michelle Creo and I'll be going over the next 3 slides. Apple's global expansion strategy is one of the biggest contributors in its long-term growth and its ability to reach a valuation of $4 trillion. Apple has intentionally built a globally distributed supply chain with major production taking place in China, India, and Vietnam. This diversification reduces geopolitical risk and helps Apple maintain efficiency and resilience. Apple is also expanding aggressively into emerging markets, especially India, where iPhone sales have reached record levels and where Apple recently opened its first flagship stores. These markets offer massive long-term growth potential as income rises and smartphone adoption increases. Beyond hardware, Apple services like iCloud, Apple Music, Apple TV Plus, and the App Store generate recurring revenue in over 175 countries. This global ecosystem strengthens customer loyalty and provides steady, high-margin income. All of these moves, supply chain expansion and emerging market entry and worldwide services, work together to support Apple's ability to scale internationally and stay competitive, and ultimately achieve milestones like a $4 trillion market valuation. Strategic leadership is a major reason Apple has been able to maintain global dominance and reach a $4 trillion valuation. Under Tim Cook's leadership, Apple has focused heavily on operational excellence, supply chain efficiency, and long-term risk management. Cook's background in operations has allowed Apple to scale production globally while maintaining product quality and minimizing disruptions. Apple's leadership also emphasizes ecosystem integration, making sure all products, software, and services work together seamlessly. This strategy increases customer loyalty and drives repetitive purchases across multiple product lines. Tim Cook takes a data-driven approach to evaluating global opportunities. Apple expands only where long-term strategic value exists, and that is why it moves into places like India, Vietnam, and service growth have been very successful. Finally, Cook's steady leadership style has strengthened investor confidence. His focus on sustainability, privacy, and responsible innovation aligns with global expectations and contributes significantly to Apple's long-term valuation. Without this strong strategic leadership foundation, Apple would not be positioned to achieve over or sustain the $4 trillion milestone. As Apple looks towards the future, it faces both major global opportunities and significant challenges. On the opportunity side, Apple is expanding rapidly into India, Southeast Asia, and Latin America regions that represent billions of potential consumers and strong smartphone growth. There is also global demand for AI-driven devices, wearables, and high-margin digital services, all of which can strengthen Apple's revenue base moving forward. However, there are also challenges Apple must navigate. Geopolitical, especially in China, could affect manufacturing and supply availability. Apple also faces growing regulatory pressure from the US and European Union regarding App Store practices, privacy, and antitrust concerns. At the same time, global competitors like Samsung and Huawei continue to innovate aggressively in hardware and pricing. How Apple responds to these challenges while capitalizing on global opportunities will determine whether it can sustain and potentially exceed its $4 trillion valuation. The balance between strategic and risk management and long-term global growth will shape Apple's future trajectory.
Apple's future global strategy for the next 10 years. For the first one, I have expand deeper into upcoming markets such as India, Vietnam, Brazil, and Africa. And for the second part, I have reduced China independence by scaling manufacturer hubs. For the third one, I have invest into AI because that is one thing that just keeps growing. And I also think that we should keep pushing the Vision Pros to create new categories of AI as well. The Vision Pros are the expensive glasses that they made, or the expensive goggles that they made, and they're like $3,500. And then the global services should also be increased as well. And then if we could strengthen the global ecosystems across all the devices, that would also really help. Apple's next decade will mostly revolve around expansion beyond traditional markets. The US and Europe are already saturated, so future growth will come from places like India, Southeast Asia, Latin America, and eventually even Africa. Apple is also reducing China dependency by moving assembly to India and Vietnam to decrease geopolitical risk. The company must double down on AI and mixed reality products like Vision Pro to compete with Samsung and Google. And lastly, services with Apple being its long-term revenue driver will help maintain its $4 trillion valuation. And for some risks that Apple must control, I think that despite Apple's recent success, staying above a $4 trillion valuation requires has a lot of risks. Antitrust could force major changes to the App Store. The China and U.S. tensions just continue to get worse, and this is a huge threat to Apple's operations. Competitors like Samsung, Huawei, and different type of brands that are emerging seem to be taking over places like China right now, especially like further Asian countries, and those are growing really fast. Apple is also perceived as a place that is behind the AI, or behind in AI, that is behind in AI compared to things like Google and the OpenAI chat. Finally, the global privacy laws and manufacturing concentration continue to create long-term risks, while Apple keeps getting worse with their AI. And finally, some strategic suggestions for leadership. I think to maintain the $4 trillion valuation that Apple has, they should keep expanding their AI budget. They are so behind, like I said before. Siri is really the only AI that Apple has, and it's okay. I wouldn't say it's the best thing, but compared to other things like Google, it's not as good as it should be. Diversifying the manufacturers will also help reduce the geopolitical exposure. Building more Apple stores in places like India, different places in Asia in general, will really help push Apple's agenda onto different places as well. Services like iCloud, Apple TV Plus should be scaled globally because they offer high margin recurring revenue. What this means is that they'll keep bringing in revenue because a lot of people sometimes forget that they have these things, and they'll just keep paying for it without canceling it. I know it's a little sketchy to do that, but that's just how the business works. And then there's also a sustainability competitive advantage, and partnering with government can help reduce the regulatory risk. These strategies can help create long-term bonds with government officials, among other companies as well. Thank you.